My staffers were detained, processed, and released. A very unpleasant experience for my staff. This was first-degree puppetry. This was hijinks with intent to goof.
Stephen Colbert there on Monday night attempting to downplay, make a joke out of the arrest of 7 of his staffers for trespassing on Capitol grounds. But Republican representatives Jim Jordan of Ohio and Rodney Davis of Illinois don't think this story is a laughing matter. In fact, they've now penned a letter to the Capitol Police Chief, John Thomas Manger, demanding the breach by Colbert's staff be investigated further. Now, Colbert says his staff went through a security check in advance and they were invited to conduct these interviews with Congress members. Joining me now to discuss is Representative Rodney Davis, who penned the letter. So, Congressman, welcome. Thanks for coming on. Perhaps you can expand on what was in that letter and what are you really hoping to learn from this investigation?
Well, Emma, thanks for having me on. First off, it takes a lot to get arrested in the House office buildings. And what happened with Colbert's staffers, who he, again, just makes it a joke, and it's no joking matter. What happened was they tried to go into the 1-6 committee hearing that was in the Cannon building earlier in the day. The press corps denied their credential requests. They knew they weren't a real news organization, so they were kicked out of the buildings. And then they came back. They were escorted in by Democratic staffers, connections to Congressman Adam Schiff. I mean, to get arrested later in the evening because you were disrupting activities in a House office building when it was closed, that's a pretty difficult thing to do. But you do that by banging on doors of Jim Jordan and Kevin McCarthy and others. And they deserve to we need to know what the police report says. We need to be able to see the mugshots. We need to be able to understand why the Capitol Police took that unprecedented step.
So you're claiming that these folks with Colbert or members of his staff, maybe not directly linked, they were trying to enter offices of GOP lawmakers without their consent?
Yes, they were. They were banging on doors, according to what we've heard. We have not seen the full police report yet, but those are documents that we've asked for, Jim Jordan and I, in our letter to Chief Manger. But it's been publicly noted that they were caught banging on the doors of Jim Jordan and Kevin McCarthy and other GOP members. Things that you shouldn't be doing in the House office buildings, even if you were let in by a Democratic staffer. But when they were arrested, they clearly had no escort, according to the Capitol Police officers I talked to.
Well, speaking of unlawful entry into the Capitol building, we know the January 6th hearings are underway, where they are investigating folks who entered the Capitol illegally. So they're facing charges for their actions at the time. Do you sense a comparison between the two? Do you also take issue and would call for an additional investigation into the folks that were at the Capitol on January 6th?
Look, I think there are investigations into anyone who might have broken the law and breached the Capitol on January 6th. But there can't be a red shirt justice and a blue shirt justice. And if Stephen Colbert's team is in the building and they do something that leads them to get arrested, and at the same time, we have Democrat colleagues of mine and the 1-6 Select Committee circus accusing my colleague Barry Loudermilk of taking a family with kids on a reconnaissance tour on January 5th, even though they never went into the only building that was breached, the Capitol. We have to stop the hypocrisy, and we have to make sure that there's equal justice.
Mm-hmm. Again, of course, the crowds on January 6th, much larger than the 7 employees of Colbert. We've heard Congress members, certain Republicans, make the comparison here. I'll let our viewers decide if that's a fair comparison. Let me pivot now to your upcoming primary race in Illinois. It's kind of a fascinating one, June 28th. Now, you are facing a Trump-endorsed current Congresswoman, Mary Miller. Essentially has to do with redistricting, why the two of you are facing each other. Why do you believe voters should choose you to represent them in Washington, sir?
Well, because I've got a record of serving in Congress and not sacrificing my core values and principles. I will always stand up for the unborn. That's why I have a 100% pro-life record. And also, I will stand up for the Second Amendment. You know, my views on the Second Amendment were pretty hardened when I had to run from bullets on a baseball field 5 years ago. I'm a licensed concealed carry holder in the state of Illinois, but I would have broken the law if I would have taken my firearm from the House campus through Washington to Virginia. And I can tell you, when I was running from bullets, the first thing that went through my mind was, I wish I could fire back. And that's something that I think that separates me and my opponent with that experience. But I'm also somebody who governs in a way that will actually put good conservative policies across the finish line in Washington. And that's what our constituents sent us here to do.
All right. And we'll be watching that primary election. We are in primary season indeed. Illinois Congressman Rodney Davis joining us this morning. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Emma.